Hey guys, Andy here. So I've had a few Huawei devices over the years. In fact, the Huawei Mate 20 Pro was my daily device for a good 6 months or so. I really liked the phone. Camera was amazing, super slick, amazing screen. And to be honest, I just kind of longed for stock Android, I suppose, which is what drew me away from it in the end. But today we're looking at one of Huawei's mid-range devices, the Nova 5T. So the Nova 5T, it is mid-range. It's £399 right now on Amazon. If you're going to buy it, please do use the link that I provide down below because I'll get a few pennies from Amazon. So £399, but actually the specs are pretty good. We're going to come to that in a second. Let's take a look first of all at the design of the device. So one thing I'll tell you straight away, it comes with a screen protector pre-installed, which I know a lot of people like because they like screen protectors, but I tend to find the pre-installed ones, they're sort of crap, basically. I prefer a tempered glass screen protector if I'm going to put a screen protector on, and these are normally the flexible, rubbery, almost plasticky. They don't give the greatest feeling when you're using them, but I've left it on because it is really pre-applied and it's applied, quite well, as you'd expect from a pre-applied screen protector. The device is quite similar to other Huawei's, I guess. Glass front and back. It's quite a nice design, I think. We're going to come to the cameras obviously in a little while, but there's loads of them up there, as you can see. It's 174 grams and only 7.8 millimeters thick, or thin if you prefer. And it does feel quite nice in the hand. It's this sort of feel that could draw me back away from the smaller device. So if you don't know, I use a Pixel 4 as my regular device, and it's the first smaller size device that I've had in about 5 years as a main device, because I just got fed up of having huge, big, heavy bricks in my hand. But this Nova 5T at 174 grams and 7.8 mil thin feels quite nice. It doesn't feel overly big. It doesn't feel like you're carrying a huge brick around in your pocket. It's got a side-mounted fingerprint sensor, which is a little bit of a sort of a change from the norm. I know Sony do it reasonably often, but there's nothing on the back. There's no inbuilt into the screen. This one, so I've registered my thumb, as you can see it's quite quick, and I've registered the 2 fingers on the side. Now the only thing I would say, it is quick, it is reliable. In fact, it unlocks when I don't mean to. So perhaps at the gym, I've got my phone out, I've recorded my latest set, and I press the power button with my right finger to turn it off. And then as I'm moving to put the phone into my pocket, I'm unlocking the screen. So I guess you just need to be careful. Maybe I should only do a different finger that I wouldn't normally have my finger there when I'm just holding the device. So it's good that it's that quick and responsive and that reliable, but it's almost too. The amount of times I rang my mum earlier today, and I've pressed the button, I've put it into my pocket, and I must have unlocked it again, put it in my pocket, because before I know it, I put it on a hold. Hello, and then by the time I got it out, she'd hung up on me. It was about 30 seconds. It was fair enough. But it's not uncommon that I've been operating things in my pocket because I do unlock it, putting the device into my pocket. So this one clearly is black, but it also comes in crush blue and a midsummer purple. So I kind of mentioned the hardware. It's the HiSilicon Kirin 980, which is their 7nm chipset, and I think it's still their quickest. It is getting a little bit old. I think the 980 now. I think that was what was in my Mate 20 Pro, but that could have been the 960. Bottom line, it's their top-end chipset. It's got an octa-core CPU with Cortex-A76s in, and an A55 as the kind of lower-paced, ticking over CPU. It's got a Mali G76 MP10 GPU, which again I think is their top-end device. You get 6 or 8 gigs of RAM. This one has 6 gigs of RAM. And that gave me a Geekbench 4 score of 9,790, which is pretty good. It's up there with the fast devices. Now, you might notice on the graphic I've put up, there are devices above it that are actually cheaper, and you might say, well, why wouldn't I go for them? It's not all about benchmarks. I'm sure you're aware it's not all about benchmarks, but it's good to know it's got the power. Geekbench 5, you might want to know because that's obviously the latest version of Geekbench. It scored 2,392. I haven't got as much to compare it against in Geekbench 5. What I can tell you, I love playing Mario Kart. It played Mario Kart, no problem at all, nice and smooth all the way through, no issues at all. I don't really play many games, so I can't tell you if there's anything more a bit strenuous for it to be tested against. It's got 128 gig of storage, there's no SD card, there's no 3.5mm jack, but there is NFC, which I think is quite nice. I think that's becoming more and more used by people these days, so that's probably quite important. It's got dual SIM, I know that's important to some people. The speakers, they're okay. So in my volume test, they scored 86.8 decibels, quite middle of the pack. I wouldn't suggest they sound great.
I swear to God, he says tails, and, by the way, all the other conspiracies that are floating around, they're all true. Okay, I don't know, maybe you're... Okay.
So I'd say podcasts don't sound too bad. I think basically the whole thing, it lacks a bit of bass. It's not quite as rounded as I might hope. It doesn't sound as good as my Pixel 4, definitely. The volume's not quite as good as I would perhaps want as well. But at the same time, listening to podcasts was fine, sort of no issues. There was never times I couldn't really hear it. Just be aware, if speakers are important to you, and I know to a lot of people they're not great. They're not great. They're not horrific, but they're not great. So the screen is a 6.26-inch IPS LCD. It is 1080 by 2340. That's 19.5 by 9 ratio, and it's about 412 pixels per inch. And I would say generally it's very good. It's nice and bright and clear, nice and crisp. There's good viewing angles, strong colours. You'll have noticed obviously the hole punch for the front-facing camera, which I don't really have an issue with. I think I prefer that over a big old massive big notch. It only scored 495 lumens in my screen brightness test, but I never really had any issues with visibility. Having said that, it's been pretty dreary the last week or so that I've been using it, so it's never been tested in really bright sunlight. But I think the screen, it looks really good. LCDs, I've said it before, LCDs these days are really good. It used to be if I saw a phone had LCDs, I'd be a little bit concerned almost. Oh dear, LCD. But these days they're really very good. All you miss out on particularly is the always on display. So let's come around to the lenses, of which you will see many. So the main one is a 48 megapixel f1.8. That's the regular 28mm wide angle lens. Then there's a 16 megapixel f2.2 30mm ultra wide angle. And there's a 2 megapixel f2.4 27mm wide angle dedicated macro camera. The first phone that I'm aware of, I mean there probably have been others, but the first one I've ever used, let's say, that's had a macro lens. Quite interesting. And there's a depth sensor as well. The main camera can do 4K at 30 frames per second and has gyro electronic image stabilization. If we come around to the front, the pinhole camera, it is a 32 megapixel f2.0 26mm wide angle lens. That's one of the higher megapixel counts on a front-facing lens that I can remember. It can do 1080p at 30 frames per second. It also has gyro electronic image stabilization. So if we come back to the main lens on the back, I think the stills look really good. I think there's a good balance of colors. The detail looks really good, looks really sharp. Generally, I was quite pleased and reasonably impressed with the main lens. The wide angle, obviously, I think everyone loves a wide angle lens. Everyone's really upset when it wasn't on the Pixel 4. It looks pretty good. It looks as good a quality as the regular lens, which is quite important, obviously. The macro lens, I think, is quite interesting because it's only 2 megapixel. So the way I envisage macro is you want to get really up close to something and get some really good detail of it. But then it's in 2 megapixel. So I think you then lose a lot of the detail. So I don't really understand that. If it'd been 8 megapixel or something like that, then it would probably work better. Night sight seems pretty good. I quite like, it doesn't look overly processed. It just gives you a pretty good overall image. It takes quite a while to take the photo, to be fair, but not overly, like maybe 6 or 7 seconds. The front-facing camera again is pretty good. It's fine. It automatically, when you switch to front-facing, I think it automatically detects if you're taking a picture of you or selfie, and it goes to portrait mode. Portrait mode generally looked pretty good. If we talk about video, I think the image stabilization works really well. I think the detail looked good. The colors look well balanced. Again, all around, generally, it looks pretty good for its video. Low light and night video, it looked reasonably noise free. Again, looked pretty good, I would say. Front facing video, much the same, looks good. I don't know if there's a natural depth of field, but I thought that was quite interesting. It's got the whole sort of portrait mode while videoing selfie, which was pretty cool. Let's take a look at the software. So obviously we're running EMUI 9.1 on Android version 9. The security patch is October, so we're a couple of months behind, but that's not too bad. There's many other manufacturers out there that will do much worse than that. And I mean, I lived with the EMUI for, like I say, 6 months before. It's not that bad. It's not sort of, I prefer it over some of the others like Xiaomi's MIUI. The launcher is not great, I don't think, myself. So for example, there's no swipe up for the app drawer. You have to tap to get it, and then you can't swipe down. Now, obviously, there are gestures, and they're quite neat. They're quite smart. They work quite well. So installing a Nova launcher or another launcher of your choice is one easy way to sort of patch over one of the devices. I wouldn't call it a weakness, but it's not a strength. There's no dark mode at this point on EMUI. I guess that might be coming. It does say it will be getting upgraded to Android 10. I don't know when that'll be, obviously. It's a little inconsistent with its notifications. So, I mean, even now, if I turn the screen on, even though I've got it set to show me details on the notifications, it doesn't until it can recognize maybe your face, because there is a face unlock. Obviously just a standard sort of using the camera face unlock, which means that you can't operate music controls and things while you're in there. And also it doesn't show me, like, there's only 2 notifications showing there, but actually I've just dismissed a few of them. So notifications, and I'm not convinced that I get all of them. So even though I've tried to set various apps to be, or not to be optimized in the background, I just feel like, I think there's times where people comment on Instagram and it doesn't tell me when it's supposed to, and I go into the app and all of a sudden I'm realizing. When I was using it in the gym, I've got an app that I do my sets and I press a button, it starts a countdown timer, 25 seconds, and that wasn't always beeping at me after 25 seconds, but when I opened it up, it said, yep, your time just finished. You'd feel the phone vibrate. Normally it beeps in my ear when I get to 25 seconds. So again, it's doing some weird RAM optimizations and battery saving, which is what we're going to come on to next. And the battery is epic. It must be to do with the battery optimizations in the software. Well, let me show you what AccuBattery is saying right now. Now, it won't be super accurate because I realized a couple of days in, or a few days in, that I needed to have, again, I needed the persistent notification, otherwise it would just shut it down in the background and it wasn't learning properly. But right now it thinks I'd get 12 hours screen on time, 150 hours if the screen was left off, and the combined usage of 49 hours, so 2 days. And I believe it, because this thing, I mean, even now, I've probably only been off charge about 40 minutes maybe, I don't know, it's not updated. But I don't know if we can see some of these. Where can we see? So there, I used it for 21 hours and it only went down a third of the battery life. 7 hours for a third of the battery life, a bit more intensive. But there was, I don't know, I think it was when the battery stats weren't particularly accurate. There's 11 hours for 10%. I've been doing a bit of cycling on my indoor bike, and I used this device to use a Zwift companion app. And I did an 1 hour and 3/4 ride with the screen on the whole time. And in that sort of 20-hour period, including that, so I had 4 hours screen on time in all, it had only lost about 30% of battery. How? That's amazing. I almost wasn't so worried about whatever it scored on my battery test. And it did score well, really well, but I didn't need to know that. It's an epic battery. So it's only 3,750 milliamp hours. It's not as big as some of the other devices, but they've just done a great job In fact, yeah, I've just got in my notes, it lasted 2 days. That time when I used it, it's when I was cycling, it lasted 2 whole days without charge with the 4-hour screen on time. So really quite impressive. Throw in, it's got 22.5 watt fast battery charging, so you get 50% in 24 minutes. Obviously it slows down as you get nearer 100%, so you're probably looking at an hour and a half to charge fully from nothing, and then it's going to go for a couple of days. I'm not a massively heavy user, so you might have a different mileage than me, obviously. So all in all, for £399, if you're in this price bracket, you need to take a look at this device. It's not really got many weaknesses. So normally, if it's not top end, so even mid-range, they will have some weaknesses in there. You go down to the budget, there's definitely going to be a few weaknesses. Screen, so it's not as bright as it could be. Did I even tell you it was I think I did, 495. So it's not as bright as it could be as other devices, but it still looks a really nice screen. The camera, can't really fault it. The speaker, I know that's not important to a lot of people, so like who cares almost. The battery, amazing. The hardware itself, the feel of the device, really very good. Really very good. So, I don't know. I mean, someone was trying to tell me in my reviews I shouldn't be giving my opinion on things. I couldn't believe. Anyway, so, and they were saying, usually just give us the facts and let us decide. And that is what I try and do. So I've tried to explain all these different things, my experiences, and you can decide. But my opinion would be, this is a good device for £399. I would love to hear your opinions though, so please do put them in the comments down below. I do read all of them and I'll reply if kind of necessary or if I can or whatever. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to my channel. Check out some of the other videos on my channel as well. Hopefully you will find those interesting and entertaining maybe. But for now, my name's Andy. I'll catch you all again soon.